Good afternoon, sir. This is Sasikanth and my partner Miru, and we're going to present on a topic: Bourgeoisie and Proletariat. Firstly, coming to the concept, the concept of Bourgeoisie and Proletariat occupy a central place, which particularly within the framework of Marxism, which is developed by Marx and Friedrich Engels. These categories are not merely economic labels but represent deeply embedded social relations that structure power, inequality, and conflict in modern capitalist societies. Their analysis offers a systematic understanding of how economic systems influence political authority, social institutions, and human relationships. So, this emphasizes the historical emergence, theoretical foundations, and implications, and also some contemporary relevance of the Borges and proletariat, which highlights the importance of uh, this concept. Coming to the historical emergence of class division, the origins of Borges and proletariat can be traced to the transformation of European studies during the decline of feudalism and the rise of capitalism. Under feudalism, society was divided into landlords, who are feudal lords, clergy, and peasants. Also, with the advent of industrialization and urbanization in century of 18th and 19th, a new economic order was emerged. The bourgeois arose as a class of merchants, traders, and industrialists who accumulated wealth through commerce and industry. They gradually challenged the authority of feudal elites and played a crucial role in political revolutions such as French Revolution. So, this class promoted ideals of liberty, equality, and private property, which laid the foundation for modern capitalist democracies. So, simultaneously, the proletariat emerged as a class of laborers who were dispossessed of land and traditional means of livelihood. They migrated to cities and worked in factories under harsh conditions, rules and regulations. Unlike previous classes, the proletariat depended entirely on selling their labor power for survival. So I'm going to talk about the conceptual framework in Marxist theory. The next slide, please. Borges, the way where we call it as a capitalist class. In Marxist theory, the bourgeois is defined as the class that owns the means of production, like land, factories, missions, and capital. Their power stems from their control over economic resources, which allows them to dominate both the labor process and the broader social order. So, bourgeois exercises power in multiple ways. The one is economical power, political power, ideological power. Economic power that controls over the production and distribution of goods. And political power that influences over state institutions, laws, and policies. And ideological power. It shapes beliefs. It shapes within beliefs, values, and cultural norms through media, education, and religion. Then Marx argued that the bourgeoisie maintains its dominance by legitimizing inequality and presenting its interests as universal societal interests. Then proletariat, then proletariat, which we call it as the working class. The proletariat, in contrast, owns no productive resources, must sell its labor to the bourgeois. So their I mean, their characterizations or like the wage dependency, the lack of job security, limited control over working conditions, And also, a main concept in understanding the proletariat is a term called alienation, which was given by Karl Marx. According to Marx, workers are alienated in four ways. The one is from the product of their labor, from the process of production, from their own human potential, and then from fellow workers. So, this alienation reduces human beings to mere instruments of production, stripping works of its creative and fulfilling aspects. Then let's talk about class struggle as divine driving force of history. Historical epoch is defined by conflicts between oppressed and oppressed classes. So, in this capitalist society, this conflicts of struggle between the Burgess, conflict and some revolutionary movements. So here where the class struggle is not existing power structures.
Hello, am I audible? Hello, am I
Yes, you are audible.
okay? Okay. So, good afternoon, sir. Now I am going to explain the idea of surplus value. So, the theory of surplus value. Moving into the core economic mechanism of capitalism, we encounter the theory of surplus value. Marx argued that exploitation is not an accidental byproduct of a few bad employers. Rather, it is a structural necessity of the capitalist system. Workers produce a certain amount of value through their labor during the day. However, they are only paid a fraction of the value in the form of wages. This remaining gap is surplus value. It is appropriated by the bourgeoisie as profit because profit accumulation depends on keeping this gap as wide as possible. There is a constant systemic pressure to suppress wages, which inevitably produce economic inequality. Then the state and false control. But how does such a system maintain itself? It is a question. So Marx posits that the state is not a neutral arbiter. Instead, it serves the interest of the ruling class by protecting private property and suppressing the poorer class. Beyond physical force, there is an ideological power. Institutions like education, religion, and the media propagate what Marx called false consciousness. This occurs when the proletariat internalize the ideology of the ruling class, failing capitalism as natural and fair. Class consciousness and revolution. So, despite the ideology control, Marx was un- of regarding the proletariat potential. He believed that the harsh reality of the factory floor and shared struggle would eventually lead to workers develop class consciousness. A collective transform the proletariat from a fragmented group into a revolutionary force. Marx predicted that internal contradiction of capitalism, such as overproduction and the widening gap between rich and poor, would eventually lead to a systemic collapse, giving it a classless communist society free from exploitation. Then critique and extension of Marxist theory. So while the Marxist framework of bourgeoisie and proletariat is foundational, it has been criticized. Marx Weber multidimensionality. One of the primary extensions comes from Max Weber, who argued that class is not only the of economic class. This means a person can have significant social influence without necessarily being a member of bourgeoisie. The middle class problem. A major critique of Marx, originally binary, is the growth of the middle strata. The rise of salaried professionals, managers, and technical experts doesn't fit neatly into the owner versus worker split, requiring a more nuanced approach to class mapping. The third one is capitalism adaptability. Many scholars argue that Marx underestimated how much capitalism could reform. Through the certain of welfare state and institutional consciousness, capitalism has managed to diffuse the revolutionary pressure that Marx believed would lead to its inevitable collapse. Then the contemporary relevance, global capitalism and India. Despite this critique, the core logic of Marx analysis remains indirectly relevant in our globalized world. First one, global bourgeoisie versus proletariat. Today, we see a modern bourgeoisie in the form of multidimensional corporations, that is MNC, and billionaire elites who control global capital. On the other side is a fragmented but massive global proletariat, including gig worker, uh, contract labor, construction worker, often referred to as a proletariat because of their job insecurity. There is economic inequality. The massive concentration of wealth among a teeny global elite, nearly a 10%, directly marks the nature of capital accumulation. So political influence. We still see political influence in the form of marginalized Indian context. So there are four applications, that is labor versus corporate capital. The divide is clear that industrial labor, which are proletariat class, and corporate capital, they are also proletariat class, and industrial labor, they are capitalist, and industrial labor, they are proletariat. The informal sector, a huge portion of India's workforce, exists in the unprotected sector, lacking the basic labor right that traditional union often fought for. Agrarian distress. We also see these class dynamics in the rural sector through widespread agrarian distress, reflecting the pressure of a capitalist market on small-scale farmers and the increased inequality. Economic reforms since the 1990s have intensified this class inequality, making Marxists too essential for understanding India's current socio-political landscape. So to conclude, the dichotomy of the bourgeoisie and proletariat remains one of inequality. Marx theories presetting are also accidents. They are systemic feature of the capitalist model. While the world has evolved since 1848, the fundamental issues of class conflict and exploitation persist. Thank you, sir. These are our reference. Thank you.